Well, hey kiddies, Retro Dad. Now, I just did a video game prices video where I talked about comparing NES prices last year to this year. Well, I left some things out, including the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And we're going to talk about those and more right after this. So we're going to look at the collection video I did last year, Side A, about Super Nintendo, and Side B for Sega Genesis. Now, I didn't talk about them in the Video Game Price 2016 comparison video, but we're going to discuss them right now, and more. When I got my Contra 3, I think I got it for $20. And I got Contra between 2011 and 2013. So Contra 3 Alien Wars last year went around 35 loose. Today it goes for about 42. Not much of a difference compared to last year. Now Demon's Crest. Ooh boy, I love that game. It's a game that's really sought after by collectors and video game players alike. Now, when I got my Demon's Crest, I think I spent about $90 on it. I think it's the most I've ever spent on a Super Nintendo game. This time last year, Demon's Crest was around $90. Today, it goes for $105 to $120 loose. So you're looking at $15 to $30 more for that game. ActRaiser 2 for the Super Nintendo September last year was going around $25 loose, give or take a couple dollars. And today prices is about the same, but leaning towards $30 on the high end. The Super Nintendo's Imperium, a really fun space shooter from Victoca, last year was going for $92 loose. Today, it is only $65 to $70 loose. So this is where we actually see a really good dip in the price for this game. So if you're willing to buy it, you might want to buy it now while it's still about $65 on average. For the Super Nintendo, I've had two white whales I've been chasing for the last couple years. The first one was Demon's Crest. I picked that up a couple years ago. And last year, I finally got Final Fight 3 at the Retro Expo. Last year, Final Fight 3 was going for about $80, and that's how much I paid for mine. Today, it goes between $90 and maybe a little bit over $100. So a $10 to $20 increase. But it is a really sought after Super Nintendo game because it's a great series. Love Final Fight. I told you Final Fight, I was gonna get ya. The Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis at one time were at completely different price ranges. The SNES was here and Sega Genesis was here. I would say the gap is getting closer between the two. Well, like I said earlier, I don't really do the prices of Sega Genesis sometimes, but it's something maybe I should do more of. We're going to do a handful of Genesis games that I talked about in my video last year. So we're going to look at Hyperstone Heist. Now, Hyperstone Heist is a great Turtles game. Love it. And I've had it at least since 2013, if not 2012. If you look at the PDX Retro Expo, people wanted about $100 for it. So last year, Hyperstone Heist was going for 50 loose, or 95 to 100 complete in the box. Today, it goes for 40 to 50 loose, and 100 complete in the box. So you might even save some money by getting the game loose this year over last year. But complete in the box is still the same. But it's definitely a sought after game for the Genesis library, especially if you love Turtles games. Contra Hard Corps last year was going for about 40 loose, and the complete in the box version was going between 75 to 80. Today, it goes for 55 loose. So this is a game we actually see a price decrease in the complete in the box version, because today it goes only for about 70. So if you want to buy the complete in the box version this year, you're going to save yourself some money. But if you want to get the loose cart, you're paying about $15 more now for it. Ghostbusters! Last year was going around 35 loose and 60 complete in the box. Today it goes between 38 to 42 loose and 60 to 68 complete in the box. Rocket Knight Adventures for the Sega Genesis last year in September was going for 10 loose, 20 complete in the box. Today, it goes for about 20 loose and 35 complete in the box. So you're looking at double for the loose cart and $15 more for the complete in the box version. Castlevania Bloodlines last year was going around 40 loose, 60 complete in the box. Today, it goes for 45 loose and 80 complete in the box. Gunstar Heroes. Last year, it was going around 40 loose and about 80 complete in the box. Today, it goes between 43 to 45 loose and still around 80 complete in the box.
There was a game I didn't talk about in the previous video that is an NES game. I didn't talk about Tournament Fighters. I got that for $100 at the expo. And now that game is almost $200. It's another game that shot up in price. And that's kind of a weird game that for a while would go below 100, creep back up to 100 and go back to below 100. And I don't think that's going to happen again, at least not for a long time. So it's around almost $200. It's like a $175 game now. So there's a video I did around the video game Swap Meet last year. I talked about Frankenstein the Monster Returns. I got it at the Retro Expo last year, and I got it for $60 to $65. At the time, it was going for $80 to $90. And it dropped down to $60 around the video game Swap Meet. Well, once again, I checked the price recently, and it's past $100 again. So let's get this on the record. There are NES games you can get for $10 or under, let's say. But that amount is shrinking in size. So let's compare 2016 to let's go back to like 2009. If you go 2016, there's about 100 games you can get for, let's say, 10 or under. Let's just get $5 down, 100 games. So if you bought all of them for $5, you're talking about $500. Compared to 2009, where most of those $5 games were $2 or $1 games, let's say on average $1 games, you can get 100 games for $100. Do you see the difference? And that's what we're dealing with now. It's not just dollar inflations, it's the fact that the games are getting harder to come by. They're getting rarer. Even common games technically are uncommon in actuality because there's not as many of them. They're not getting reprinted. Unlike comics where they can reprint the books or put them in graphic novel style, you really don't see that for the NES, Super Nintendo, or Sega Genesis. Even with the NES Mini, it's not the same as having the actual physical carts. I love to collect for the original Game Boy because the prices are a lot easier for the pocketbook, honestly. You can get games for $5 and under. There's plenty of $1 to $2 50-cent Game Boy games compared to the NES only has a couple dollar games these days. On average, most very common NES games are 10 and under, but more games like, let's use the example of Contra. When I got Contra back in 2009, I didn't have Contra when I was a kid, I had Super C. I always like Super C over Contra anyways, it's one of my favorite NES games. I don't know why I never owned Contra, because my cousin owned Contra. Because I had family members own Contra, I don't know why I never owned Contra, but I always liked Super C over it. But comparing Contra, when I got Contra about 2010, I got it for $20 to $25. If you look at one of my older videos in 2013, I talked about getting Contra.
Contra's worth a little bit more than Super C. As you can see, I paid $25 for Contra. This was a couple years ago, and that seems to be about right. Super C is my original cart from when I was a kid.
Well, that's how Contra was going around for a while. It's about that $25 mark. Today, Contra's about a $40 game, going to $50. That's crazy because Contra's a good game, don't get me wrong. Contra's actually a very common game. but it's fetching uncommon prices. And that's what you're seeing for a lot of NES games. The Game Boy doesn't really have that. There are some that are expensive, like Avenging Spirit, the game I've been wanting since 2007. I don't know why I didn't buy it then. Maybe because I wasn't really collecting for Game Boy, but I wish I would have picked it up then because now it's an $80 game. Well, thank you so much for watching this video about prices again. So this is part 2. There won't be a part 3, at least not right now, but thank you again. So have fun, go game, see you later.